Hey everyone, today I'm going to show you how to design a daily planner using Affinity Publisher. When you're finished, you're going to have a print-ready file that you can print at home, that you can upload to a print-on-demand platform, or that you can even send to a bulk printer. So you can sell your planner on Etsy, on Amazon KDP, or even on your own website. So let's go ahead and we'll get into it. Now, before you begin, you want to make sure that you've clarified your concept, you've done some market research, you've outlined the planner structure, you've sketched out some of the main pages, and you've generated the actual content. If you want help with any of that stuff in detail, then check out Create Your Dream Daily Planner from Scratch, then Sell It. That's the video I came out with last week. Then when you've got that stuff, come on back to this video. The planner that I'm working on right here is an undated daily and weekly productivity planner specifically for business owners. Once you've collected all of those things, then you're ready to set up your document. So open up Affinity Publisher, and this is Affinity Publisher 2. You're gonna get this dialog box come up. Alternatively, you can go up here to File, New. Now you can choose one of these page presets over in the left-hand menu right here, or you can enter a custom size. 6x9 is a very common size for planners. Now we want to make sure DPI is set to 300. Now for pages, I don't actually know how many pages that my planner is going to have just yet. I'm going to keep facing pages checked mark just because that's going to make it easier when I'm designing the layouts to see pages side by side. We're going to start on the right-hand page. The color format is important. If you plan on printing this planner with an offset printer, you're going to need to choose CMYK. Now, the CMYK color space is what all printers need to print in. The RGB color space is strictly digital, so nobody can print in RGB. Now, some printers will accept files in RGB because they convert it to CMYK on their end. So just make sure beforehand what your printer requires your files to be in, RGB or CMYK. If you're printing your planner on a print-on-demand platform like Amazon KDP, you can use CMYK or RGB because they will convert it on their end. And there is actually a benefit of choosing RGB if you're printing on KDP, especially with your cover design. And that is because when you upload your cover to KDP, they are going to use the image from your cover and display that on your book listing. The CMYK color space looks very dull on a monitor. That's why we have RGB color space to begin with. So if you're concerned about the richness of colors and how those are showing up on your actual book listing, you might want to actually submit your files in the RGB color space just so that those colors can be as vibrant as possible, especially with blacks. Now for this planner, I'm not worried about that, so I am going to set it to CMYK. Next, we'll head over to margins. Now for margins, again, you want to check with your printer for the minimum margins. So for KDP, the minimum outside margin is 1/4 of an inch, but you want at least 1/2 inch for a comfortable experience, especially if you have any text blocks that read all the way from right to left, or left to right rather. And if you're working with something larger, like something that's 8x10 or 8.5 by 11, you're probably going to want at least a 1-inch margin. Otherwise, things look just a little bit too tight to the edges. So if you want your margin the same all the way around, you can just make sure that this link is clicked here, and you'll only have to enter it once here. If you want different sizes for inner, outer, top, and bottom, then you can break this chain here and enter different amounts. Now this planner I'm working on is going to be coil bound, so I want a wider inner margin. So I'm going to set that to 0.75. Now bleed is only going to be relevant to you if you plan on having text or images that go all the way to the edge of your page and over. Standard bleed is usually 0.125 inches all the way around, and then you'll hit create and you're ready to go. Okay, our document is set up and now we're ready to tackle our page layout. So there are going to be some single pages that appear only once throughout the entire planner, and then there are going to be pages that are repeated over and over again. And for those, we're going to use something called master pages. This means we only have to create that page once, and then we'll be able to duplicate that page as many times as we want. Now to keep the design layout looking tight, I always like to use guides and grids. So come up and click on your master page A at the top here because we want our grids and our guides and our margins to show up on all of the pages. Now, if your page looks blank like this, your margins aren't showing, you're going to want to show your margins. So you can either click Control W, alternatively, you can go up to View here and make sure that Show Margins is checked. If you've got a bleed, you're probably gonna wanna show the bleed as well. You're gonna wanna show guides. And if you've got a grid, you want to check that as well. So I'll just show you how to set those things up because none of those things are set up right now. So go down here to guides. Now I'm going to set my columns to 6. And really what these are all about, it's just to help you line up the different design elements properly on your page. I'm going to keep the gutter at 0.185 inches. We've already set up the margins here, and then I'm going to close that. Now, if you want to set up a grid, you can. Grids are great if you're working with lots of smaller design elements. I'm not going to use one for this. I don't think I need it. So we'll close that. And also, you could set up a baseline grid. Baseline grids are great if you're working with lots of text blocks. I'm not going to be doing that, but this can really help with your typography if you've got large amounts of texts. You probably won't if this is a planner, so I'm not going to use that, but I just wanted to let you know that it's there if you need it. So for my planner, I've got 2 separate master pages that I'm going to set up. One is the weekly plans, so that's going to occur at the start of every week. And then I've got my daily pages. So I'm going to set up the weekly plan first. Okay, so firstly, make sure that your Pages panel is actually open. You should see that there on the left. If you don't, go to Window, Pages, and make sure that that's ticked off, and then your Pages panel will open up. And again, you'll see 2 sections here. The top is for your master pages, and this down here are the rest of your document pages. Now this little icon up here, you can click to add a master page. Now I've already got one here, this Master A. I'm gonna right click on it, and I'm going to go to Spread Properties. This is where you can give it a name. So I'm gonna call this my weekly plan. If you wanna adjust anything like the dimensions, which I wouldn't because this is all gonna be in the same book, so the dimensions need to be the same. Scaling, you're probably not gonna use, and if you want different margins here, you can do that as well, but we're not going to. And then make sure it's clicked. You'll know it's clicked because you'll get this little purple border around it. And now when I'm working on this spread, this is the master page that I'm working on. So now we just start designing the page. So I'm gonna go to the left panel here and I'm gonna choose the Frame Text tool. And I'm gonna drag out a text box. So this is gonna say Week 1 Plan. So next we wanna set up a text style for this block of text. So text styles are gonna help you maintain consistency of your typography throughout your entire file. So once we have set up a text style, we're gonna be able to apply that to other blocks of text if and when we want to. But the really cool thing is if we decide last minute, after we've already created our entire planner, that, hey, I actually think I want to use this different font, I can just go in one time to that specific text style, update it there, and it will make a global update throughout the entire file. So that makes it so much faster and easier and more efficient. So if you don't see the text style palette, you'll go to Window, Text, and then Text Styles, and then you'll see that populate over here on the right-hand side. So you can see there are already a bunch of text styles that are already sort of auto-populated over here. We can go in and apply any of these, or we can create our own. Now to create a custom text style, I'm just going to highlight this text and style it however I want. So I'm gonna go up to the top left here where all of my fonts are, and I'm gonna choose a style. So I'm gonna choose Montserrat for this. I'm gonna choose a bold weight, and I think I might actually make it in all caps. So I'll go to Text, Capitalization, and I'll do all caps. I also want this to be quite a bit bigger. So really, when you're looking at body text, so paragraphs of text, you really don't wanna go anywhere below 7, but ideally to make it a really comfortable reading experience, you want it probably between 10 points and 12 points, depending on the font. This is a heading, so I'm gonna make it much bigger. So I'm gonna start there at 16 point. I might adjust that later, that's totally fine. And I also want to adjust the color. I don't want it to be stark black. So color is over here on the right-hand side. I'm just gonna click on that. So you can use the color picker to just pick anywhere along the spectrum here, and then you would click inside. Now I'm gonna keep my interior black and white and various shades of gray, so I'm not gonna worry about that. So I'm gonna go over here to CMYK, and C is basically blue, it's cyan, M is magenta, I don't want any of that, Y is yellow, nothing there, and then K is black. And I'm gonna bump that up probably to about, I don't know, we'll start with 60%, actually we'll do 80%. And see how that looks. So once you've styled your text, you want to create a text style. So make sure your text is highlighted or your cursor is somewhere inside your text box. Then head over to the right to your text styles dialog box, and then go to the bottom here. You can see like a little plus paragraph symbol and a plus A. So the first one is creating a new paragraph style. So if we press that, whatever you've styled here, that's going to be applied to the entire paragraph. So I'm going to click Create New Paragraph Style. Now you can give this a name. I'm going to call it Weekly Plan Header. If we wanted this to be based on another style that we had already created, we could choose that here. We're not going to worry about any of this other stuff right now. We're just going to make sure it says character or paragraph rather. And you can choose any other styles in this left-hand menu right here, but it's already picked up what we've done. So you can see the font family is Montserrat. It's in bold and it's 16 point size. If you wanted to change the color, you could do that here. Paragraph spacing, justification, drop caps, anything like that, you can choose from this left-hand menu. And then when you're satisfied, you just click OK. So now that text style is going to show up right here. So if ever I want to use this style on another block of text, I can type out that text. I can click this and then it is going to populate that text box with the style that we've created. So I'm going to click out of there. I'm going to choose my arrow pointer and I'm just going to reduce the size of that box. So on the rest of the page here, I want space for someone to create their weekly plan for the week. So basically list all the tasks that they want to get accomplished this specific week. I'm going to have another few columns as well, and I'll explain those as we go along. But to start off, I want some lines and some checkboxes so that people can write down their tasks. So I'm going to go back up to View. I'm going to choose Baseline Grid, click on that. Now I want to make sure that these lines are actually the correct space. So most notebooks have anywhere from 7 to 8 or 9 millimeters between each line. So that's what we're aiming for here. I would say 7 is definitely the minimum. I would like to do 8. So you'll see the grid spacing is in points here, and I don't know what the conversion is, but you can actually just type in 8 millimeters, go ahead and hit tab, and then it converts it for you. So that's 22.7 points. Now we know this is actually going to be a comfortable spacing between lines for people to write in. You also want to make sure that we've got a good starting position here. So right now it's on 8. I'm going to make that at 0. And then you can choose relative to top of spread, page, or margin. And I want that to line up properly with my margins. So I'm choosing relative to top of spread. You can see when you look at the bottom at my margins there, that last line lines up with that bottom margin. That's what I want. Adjust yours as necessary. Click close. And you can see there's something funky going on with my text box here. So I just need to pull down on that handle and it's visible again. Now I actually want this text to line up with my top margin here. And you can see it's snapping to the grid, which I actually don't want. So I'm gonna go back up to View, Snapping, and I'm just gonna turn off Enable Snapping because I find that kind of annoying. Now, if you've turned off snapping and you are still seeing some snapping going on, like I've got here, head over to the spacing palette here, and you'll see Align to Baseline Grid. Make sure that that is ticked off. Otherwise, it's gonna drive you crazy. You're not gonna have any idea why it's still snapping. There we go. Okay, now I can move it up to the top of my margin where I want it to be. I'm gonna create the lines. So I'm gonna go over to here to the left, choose the pen tool. I'm going to choose the stroke color, and that is set to 40. I'm going to keep it at 40. And then I'm also going to keep the stroke width to 0.5 points. You can play around with that, but I find that 1 point usually looks a little bit too thick and heavy, so I like to keep it usually at about 0.5 points. And I'm going to leave a little bit of space for my checkbox that I will add afterward. And I'm going to click, and then I'm going to hold Shift and click exactly where I want this line to end. Holding Shift makes sure that the line is a completely straight line and doesn't take on any angles. So I'm going to bring it to the end of this third column here, and this is why setting up columns is really helpful for your layout. So that's going to be hard to see because of the guides, so I'm just going to turn them off for a sec so you can have a look at that. And then I've got 3 other columns, so I'm just going to copy and paste this. I'm going to click it, I'm going to press Option and Shift and drag it over, and then I'm going to release that, and then I'm going to adjust the size, and I'm going to do that 2 more times. And again, you can't see it because my guides are turned on, but I'll turn them off in a sec so you can see what that looks like. Okay, so there are my lines. That one I think goes over the margin just slightly. So I'm just gonna nudge that over with my arrow key. And then I'm gonna create my checkbox. So we could do a box for this. And again, I'm gonna keep the stroke the same color and the same width. And then you can just drag out a box, and you wanna hold the shift key, and that's going to create a perfect square. Okay, let's turn off the guide so that you can see what that looks like. Now I want to name these columns. So I'm gonna bring this down probably to the next, at least the next line here. And I'm gonna hold shift just to keep it moving directly straight down. If I take my hand off shift, I can kind of move it all around, which I don't want to do. I want to keep it perfectly vertical. Okay, I've given myself some room for some column headers here. So I'll go back to the text box and I'm going to drag out a box. This is going to be called task. So I've got Montserrat semi-bold. I'm going to keep that at 8. You really don't want to go too much below that. 7 would be absolute minimum, again, depending on the font. With this font, it is still going to be legible. So I'm going to duplicate this text box. Again, that's Option and Shift and drag. I'm going to shift that to this column. I'm going to use this handle to resize the text box to exactly the size of this column. I'm going to center it. So I'm going to go up here and click center align and then rename this. So in this planner, at the beginning of the planner, people are going to outline their goals. And then when they're creating their weekly plans, I want every single task that they put on their weekly plan to relate directly back to one of the goals that they've set. So that's what this is all about. I also want people to track how long they think a task is going to take versus how long it actually takes. That's something that's been pretty critical with my own productivity, because so often we vastly underestimate how long something is actually going to take. So I'm having a column for estimated time and also a column for actual time. So that looks about right. Now I am just going to copy this task line, and I only want about 10 of these on this page because I don't want people giving themselves too many tasks in a week. So I am going to select that whole line and again press Option, Shift, and I'm going to drag it down to the next line. Then I'm going to select both of those lines, same thing, Option, Shift, drag it down. And you can keep repeating this as many times as you want to. Now I'm going to move this entire block down a little bit more, just to give that header a little bit more space. And then at the bottom here, I want a little section that people can write reflections for the week, sort of like a what worked, what didn't. And I'm gonna call that weekly review. And I'm gonna drag one of these lines down here, and then I'll just copy that. Now, one thing I'm realizing as I'm doing this is that this weekly plan page, it's always going to appear on a right-hand page. So I have to make that adjustment in my master page. So I'll go over to my master page, right click on it, spread properties, and then where it says page layout, I'm going to click single and then hit OK. Now you can see that's kind of thrown everything off slightly with my margins. So I'm just going to grab everything on the page and just move that over accordingly. Again, I'm holding the shift key just so that it moves perfectly in a straight line and not all over the place. Once you've got the basic type layout set up, this is when you will want to add any other additional design elements. So if you've got imagery that you want to use or graphics, I think what I'm going to do is just add a simple graphic element at the top here for now. All I'm going to do is grab my rectangle shape from the left palette here. I'm going to choose a fill of, we'll try 20% black. And then I don't want any stroke, so I'm going to turn that off. And you can do that by clicking this little strike through button right here. Now, because I want this rectangle to bleed off the edge of the page, this is where I'm going to use my bleed. So I am going to start at the bleed way over here. So the bleed is where this bluish purple box is. And I'm going to drag that out all the way. You can see I've got it from bleed to bleed, and I want that to sit behind the text, not on top of it. So if you go to these positioning tabs up here, this is where you can push things back or pull them forward. Back one, we'll send it back one. And then if you want to just send it directly to the back, you can do that. Now you really want to zoom into the bleed and make sure that any design elements that are bleeding off really do extend past the bleed. So let's say you want to upload this to KDP. If you're even like this much inside the bleed, your document will get rejected. So make sure it's like really firmly, flushly up against that bleed, or just extend it right past the bleed. Then you're not gonna have any trouble whatsoever. I'm gonna line that up with my top margin, and I'll line up the bottom with this baseline grid here and just see what that looks like. And then I'm just gonna move this text box down so that it is centered in between that design element. I wanna be able to track the percentage of the tasks that I'm completing every week. This really just serves as a personal assessment of how well I'm executing my plan on a weekly basis. So I'm gonna include a box at the top here where I can write out how much of my plan as a percentage did I accomplish for each week. So I'm going to grab my rectangle tool here. I'm gonna set the fill to white. I'm gonna turn the stroke off, and then I'm going to create a rectangle right here. Again, very handy to have these columns so that I can keep everything looking consistent by just measuring things out to the width of the column. That really helps in your overall layout design. So that's the width. I'm going to adjust the height of that in a moment. And for my text, I think what I'm gonna do is I'm going to copy and paste this, drag it over, again, Shift and Option at the same time. And then I'm gonna type %complete, and I'm gonna change the weight of that just so it's not so heavy. I think I'm gonna keep the size the same, and then I'll just do it as a thin weight. Now again, I'm gonna move that over so it's perfectly lined up with my column. Now I've got this nice line coming here, perfectly lined up, and then I can turn off my guides, and I'm just gonna move that up so it's in line here. So at the end of the week, now I can come back, I can see how many tasks I completed, and I can divide the number of complete tasks by the number of tasks I initially set for myself, and then I'll write the percentage up here in this white box. So to create a new master page, I'll go back over to the master pages panel, and I'll click this little plus add master here. So this I'm going to call my daily plan. Now this one's going to be a spread. So I'll click facing pages, make sure it's on spread, margins I'm going to keep the same, and then I'll hit OK. So I'm gonna go ahead and create this spread here, and then I'll come back to you once the spread is done. All right, I'm almost done on my second master page here, but I wanted to quickly show you something that you probably are going to use at some point, and that's how to create a dotted line, because it's not really very intuitive. So for this page of lines I've got on this second right-hand page here, I want every other line to be a dotted or dashed line. So let's zoom in so you can actually see what I'm doing. I've just selected one line here, and then I'm gonna go up to my stroke, and I'm gonna click on this dotted lines, dash line style. I'm gonna keep it at 0.5 point. And then we go down to these boxes here. This is where things can get a little bit confusing, but the main thing you need to know is you're really only dealing with these first two boxes. The last four, you can essentially leave at 0. So I'm gonna put 1 here, I'm going to put 2 there, and then the rest I'm going to set to 0. And you can see we're starting to have a dashed line form. Now, you can kind of play around whether you want that to be 2 or 1. I prefer 2. And then if you want dotted versus dashed, go up to the cap here. Oh, and there's also this button here, balanced dash pattern. You can click that. That's just going to even things out a bit. Go to cap here, and if you want a round cap, that's going to give you more of a dotted line. And if you click on butt cap, that's going to give you more of a square dashed line. Now, if you want perfect dots, you're going to go down to these 2 squares here and play around with those configurations. This is about what I need for my design. All right, so I've made a couple of tweaks here, but this is the gist of my second master page. Let's say we wanted to adjust the treatment of this typography here. I set up a second text style here called subheading. So I just wanted to show you if I wanted to make an adjustment to all of this type right here, because I've assigned a text style to all of it, I can just go over to my text style here, subheading. I can double click on that, the text box will come up, and now I can make any changes that I want to make. So I can just kind of scroll down this entire list here, and you can see how my font style is just, it's changing. Without this, I would have to go back and adjust each one separately, and of course that would take a million years. So I'm actually going to keep it as is, but I just wanted to quickly show you if you wanted to make any adjustments globally, you can do it. This planner contains 13 weeks. So I want to create 13 copies of this master pages so that I can apply each one to a full week of my planner. So I'm going to choose the spread, right click on it. I'm going to hit duplicate, scroll down. I'll just go to spread properties and I'm going to change the name to daily plan week 2. And then I will change this to week 2. And I'll go ahead and do that 10 more times. Now, once I've created all of those master pages, I can apply them to all of the pages in my document. So I can do that in a couple of different ways. I can go down to the pages in my document. I can choose the entire spread because remember, we're applying a whole spread here, not just a page. So I'm going to make sure that both pages of that spread are selected. I'll right click and hit apply master, and I can choose the master page that I want to use. And in this case, it's daily plan. And then I can choose specific pages that I want that to show up on. I can just choose current spread, all pages, odd, even, or specified pages. So I'm going to choose specified pages. So I want this to show up from page 2, and I want that to show up on the first 5 spreads. So that'll be up to page 11. And I'm also making sure that the replace existing is checked here. And then I'll hit OK. Okay, now you can see that each of these pages, all the way up to page 11, has this spread. And then I would do the same thing for the next section where I want it to appear as week 2. So again, I can do it the same way by clicking on the pages in my document, or I can do it from the master page itself. So I'll click here, click on my master page spread, right click, apply master to pages. Same thing here, I can just choose the specific pages that I would like this to appear on. So I want this to appear from page 12. And I want that to go all the way to page 21. And I'll hit OK. And this week 2 actually says week 3. So I need to change that to week 2. Okay, so now let's go down to page 12. And yep, that has populated. Anyways, one more way you can apply a master page is you can literally just click and drag it. So if I've got this spread selected, rather than do the right click and entering the pages, I can, if I want, actually just drag this down and release it on any of the pages that I want this master page to apply on. So that's just another way that you can do that. How do we add page numbers? Because we certainly don't want to be doing that by hand on every page. So what we're going to do is just first decide where you want your page number to appear. Grab a text box. Usually they're on the bottom, left and right corners. So we'll just grab that box. And then we go to text, insert, fields, page number. Okay, then you're going to want to style this any way you want. So here I'm going to want that butting up to the left-hand margin. I would use this panel here to choose, if I wanted to change the font, the weight, the color, the size, or anything like that. I can do that in this top panel. Or I could choose a text style from over here, or I can click into this character panel. So lots of options for how you can style that. And then you probably want the page to appear on the other side as well. So I'm just gonna option, click, hold shift as well to keep that in line. I'm gonna move that all the way over to the right-hand margin, and I'm gonna adjust the alignment because I want this side to butt up to the right-hand margin. So I'll just go up to the top here and I'll click right align, and that is it. Now, when I go down to these pages, you'll see that the pages are numbered. It's dynamic numbering, so that's going to give you the correct page number on each of the pages. Now, keep in mind, I've created a lot of different sections here, so I would actually have to do that on each of these sections. But you can create, this is where things get a little bit more complicated, but essentially I could create a nested master page. So in this case, what I would probably do is I would actually create another master page spread here, or I would just have the numbers. And once I've done that, I would just grab the master page with the numbers, the master page spread, and then I could drag it down to the other master pages. Okay, and then that way, that would save me from having to add the page numbers to each one of these master spreads. So I hope that makes sense. I'm going to get rid of the page numbers because I don't actually want them on my document. Okay, at this point, I would want to add any of my other singular pages that don't include a master page. So we can do that very easily. Anywhere you want to just add a spread that does not include the master page, you can click on a page, and then you can just hit the Add Page button. So number of pages, if I wanted to add a spread, I would click 2, and I want that to appear after page 36 and 37. So I'd make sure that is clicked, make sure the correct page number is here, and then I can choose, do I want to apply one of the master pages? Now in this instance, I don't, so I'll click none, and then we'll just add that spread right there. This is how you add those pages in between your master spreads. I'm going to show you how to add the front matter of your book. So front matter is really just copyright info, a title page if you've got one, author's note, maybe there's some sort of instructions. So for this planner, there are going to be quite a few instructions on how to actually use it. So what I would like to do is link to some sort of a video tutorial on how I'm going to use this planner. So my idea is I'm going to add a QR code to this planner. Rather than have all of the instructions written down in the planner, someone's going to be able to just click on the QR code and then they'll be taken to a video tutorial. I'm going to go back to my page 1 and I'm going to add a couple of pages here, number of pages 2, after page 1, and I'm going to choose the weekly plan master page for that. I'm going to come back to this page later to fill that out, but let's work on the front matter right now. So I'm going to have some sort of a title page here. I don't know exactly what I'm going to call this planner just yet, but for right now, I'm going to call it Productivity Planner. Super creative, I know, and we're going to style that however we want. Let's bring that up to like 18. Maybe we'll do extra bold, and I'll just move that text box out a little bit. And I'm going to adjust the letter spacing here. I'm going to press Option and the arrow, and you can see that's just giving some space in between. So you can do it that shortcut way, or you can head over to the character palette here, and you can see right here, this is tracking, and you can just go up and down here and do it that way as well. Now I want to make sure this is centered in the page, so I will click the text box, go up here, make sure the paragraph is centered, which it is, and then you can go up to the top here for alignment. And I want to make sure that this is aligned horizontally to the page. So I'm going to click that button there. I'm just going to adjust this text box. Now again, hopefully your title page is a little more dynamic than this one. Next, I want a couple of pages. One of them is going to be the copyright page. So I'm going to add a couple of extra pages after page 1, and I do not want a master page on there, so I'll hit none, hit OK. And on the left, I'm going to include my copyright information. Now you'll notice that my margins did not come along for the ride on this spread here. So I would have to set my margins for this page again. I'm kind of going to wing it right now, and it's going to give me an opportunity to show you something else here. I've just got my cursor over toward the left-hand ruler here. And if you can't see a ruler, just go up to View and make sure you've got Show Rulers checked. You can just click here and just drag a ruler out wherever you want it. So that's kind of handy. So I'm kind of just gonna, I know that my margin is like 1/2 inch, so I'm just gonna drag it out here. All right, I'm gonna grab my text box, and this is where you would put your copyright information, okay? So that looks way too big. I'll put that down to like 12 point. We'll just use bold, and I will left align. So on a Mac, Option G is gonna give you the copyright symbol. We'll do the year, and I'm just gonna put my name. If you have a logo, you can put the logo here. I will drag this out. Again, you'll want to style that however you see fit. And then if you wanted to include some sort of instructions on how to use your planner, or some sort of an author's note or anything, go ahead and do that over on this side. Now the idea I have for mine is because this planner is going to have quite a few instructions to it. And I think it's going to be too many instructions to include in the beginning of every single planner. I don't want like several pages of every one of these planners to have, several pages of instructions. So my idea here was to put a QR code here. So when someone uses this planner, they can scan the QR code and they'll be sent to a website where there are video instructions on how to use the planner. So I have actually got a web page open here, bit.ly.com, and it's a free QR code generator. So I've already gone ahead and created this QR code, and I'm gonna download a PNG of this QR code, and I'm gonna place it right here. So this is gonna kill 2 birds with 1 stone. Now you're gonna see how to import an image. So File, Place, and I'm gonna go to Downloads. There's my QR code. Now you can either click or you can click and drag. Clicking and dragging will allow you to place your object at the size that you want. So I'm going to align that to my page. I'll go up to these alignment tools here and I will align that horizontally as well as vertically. And I'll include a little text box here. Scan QR code for instructions on how to use this planner. And then we'll style that however we want. Again, I'm just doing this really rough right now. This planner is going to be finessed quite a bit by the time you actually see this for sale on my website. Now we want to actually export this thing print ready. At this point, we've got quite a few of the pages. We've got the first page, we've got the copyright, we've got some instructions, and then we go into the content. We will go to File, Export. We want to make sure that PDF for print is chosen. Resolution needs to be 300 dpi. Include the bleed if you've got one. And then if you want to view the file once it's completed exporting, you can check that, which I always like to do. You want all pages. You don't want this to export as spreads. You want it exported as pages. Now for the presets here, if you're going to a local printer or some sort of a professional printing service, you can choose PDF X1A 2003. When I worked as a designer, this was always the preset that we would use to send to professional printers. If you're just sending this to a print-on-demand service like Amazon KDP, you can just use PDF for print and that's going to be totally fine. And most of this other stuff you don't really have to worry about. I would suggest making sure that all of your fonts are embedded. Sometimes that can cause issues with the printer if the fonts are not embedded. Most of this other stuff you really don't need to worry about, and then you'll just click export. I'm gonna save that to my desktop for now, and we'll hit save. Okay, I've opened that up, and now this is the final document. Now, one more very important step here before you actually upload this to a print-on-demand platform or send it to a printer, do a test print at home. There's a huge difference between what you see on a screen and what it looks like on the printed page. I'm going to print this off and, I might decide that my fonts are too small or things look too cramped or whatever, but you have to look at an actual printed physical copy before you send it off to the printers, just to ensure quality, everything's legible, everything looks as expected. And then of course, this is your interior file. You're now going to want to create a cover file. And I've got quite a few videos on how to create covers. I've got how to create covers in Canva, in Affinity Publisher. So go ahead and look at one of those. And finally, when this planner is ready, I'm going to print it off on a couple of different print-on-demand services to show you the difference. So hopefully you'll find that interesting when I post that video. And if you've now created your planner and you want to learn how to sell it on Amazon, download my free guide, 3 steps to publishing your first low content book in less than a day, down in the description below. And again, if you want to learn more about the actual printing, pricing, selling, and marketing your planner, check out Create Your Dream Daily Planner from Scratch, then Sell It. That is coming up next. Thanks for watching. See you next time.